r/ask Reddit, Ex-convicts. What is the worst thing you have ever seen a guard do while in prison? I worked at a max facility and I was super respectful. No need not to be ever. And the men there were always super respectful back. It's frustrating that other officers didn't realize this and administration didn't realize that the same officers who kept having issues were having issues because they were starting it. I really enjoyed my job. I was super strict because I have a fear of getting in trouble. I communicated well and seriously never had issues. My favorite memory was I was working straight 16-17 hours shifts for 27 days in a row before I was scheduled for a major surgery. The inmates knew because it was a small prison and no one keeps their mouth shut, lol. But I was sitting in the guard box on the yard and I looked at my watch and it was 1700 and blinked and it was 1800 and an inmate is tapping on the window, letting me know second shift was on so I wouldn't get in trouble. I obviously didn't mean to fall asleep. I was just exhausted. It was just a super nice thing to do. Turns out that if you respect someone they might just respect themselves. Thank you for being a good person. We should rehabilitate people, not endlessly punish them. I'm a CO, and one of the worst things I ever saw was an officer kidney punch a handcuffed inmate. Naturally, I reported it. That officer is now a deputy warden. Specifically, my deputy warden. True story. This is why people say all cops are bastards. Decent people, like you, will be forced out of the position or killed. The vermin rise to the top. Strangely enough, I uncovered some official corruption this last spring and I have been persona non grata ever since. Basically I'm being ostracized and half of everyone involved was promoted into leadership. So needless to say, my days in my position are numbered and I'm looking for a new job. My friend was in prison recently and told me this story. They were caught with drugs in their cell. The correctional officer came in with 6-8 jugs of rotten milk, popped off the lids, and set them down in the cell. He told the inmates he'd remove the jugs the next day, as long as they were still full, i.e., can't flush them down the toilet. Apparently it was a long night of gagging and being miserable. They tried to take shifts covering the jugs with their hands, but of course it was mostly futile. That said, he said it was a better alternative than the hole or other more accepted punishments. Apparently some prisons are trying to phase solitary out, and revulsion-based punishments are one alternative some places are using. Definitely stopped any of them from hiding drugs in the cell in the future, mostly out of fear of the fellow inmates kicking one's ass if they knew you risked getting that punishment for the whole cell again. A friend who did time in a federal prison told me that the intimidation by the guards is far worse than that by other inmates. For the feds I would say so, because people in fed prison are not always hardened criminals. You'll have a prison of hard asses, then a prison for white collar crime, then a prison for pedophiles non-violent. Supermax is bad. You have to be a tough bastard to work or live that. The other two aren't shit. It'd be easy to intimidate someone for those. I don't know that prisons are really segregated to that extent. My friend is in prison and there are pedos, non-violent, and violent offenders. Probably some white collar crime too. Fight broke out in cafeteria. Normally guards will let the fight transpire for a minute before jumping in, mainly to let them fight it out and settle their differences. It was two dudes. A minute into the fight one dude pulls out a knife and straight up pierces the other dude in the head. Guards were well aware of the situation and just ducking watched. Guy bled out and they finally tackled the stabber. A solid 2 minutes had passed before they even did anything. Why'd the fight break out? Believe it was over food, but I'm not sure. My mate and I were in our cells when it first broke out, and only a couple guys saw it happen at first, so I've only heard rumors. Let the K9 shit on an inmate. Happened far more than once. One of my cellmates got hit once for getting in a fight. Not as bad as solitary, but still. People don't realize that there's essentially no enforceable rules that COs have to follow as long as no inmates die. It's not like you're going to report them. How is that even administered? Like why would anyone lie down and let a dog do that to them? A CO walked into the cell a few hours after the fight with the K9. Told the rest of us to stand aside, and just said alright, lay down. Inmate's name. Sudge has a present for you. You know better than to throw punches. Sudge was the K9. He knew what that meant of course, and was saying duck. For real, That was hours ago and everything, of course. But the officer just said lie down or you'll get his face instead of his rear. So he laid down. They had him sit on his hands. The punishment was administered. And that was that. Gross as duck. I looked away when I saw the dog squatting over his face. But I think he threw up. Thank God I never had to go to county, but did spend a day night in the bookings in NYC, Queens specifically. I got busted cause I was in a vehicle with someone doing drugs. They were hitting a pipe and the Tactical Narcotics Task Force, TNT, was parked right across from us. Dude threw his pipe at my feet as the D's were running up to the car. He wouldn't claim it as his, so they charged everybody in the van. There was 3 of us, handcuffed in the back of a white panel van with no windows and a little seat. No way to stop yourself from falling over when they hit the gas cause everything is slick plastic. We were the first ones arrested. They drove around doing busts for 3-4 hours until the van was full. Crack dealer, dope addicts, etc. The crack dealer had swallowed his pieces of crack thinking that would save him. He still got arrested. After an hour he's not looking so hot. Sweaty, huge pupils shaking. His bags busted open after he swallowed them. We end up getting the D's attention and they finally take him to the hospital. From there we go to the precinct for like 4-6 hours. Chill in a cell, nothing special. Next was Queens bookings. First cell there was like at least 75 people. They take all your info and blah blah. There's a dude in the cell talking wild loud. I got shot 10 times in 1989. I can't control my bowels. I need help going to the bathroom. CO, I need help. Nah dog, no help coming. They just walk right by. Now he's getting agitated. I'm finna shit myself, he says. Everybody's going wild now. 75 dudes like, CO, you'll better take him to the hospital or the nurse or do something. 2 minutes later we all smell it. Ole boy, shit all over. Now everybody really going off, lol. Dude sees a CO coming and scoops up a turd and hurls it at him as he's walking by LMAO. I've never seen the gates open so fast and so many COs rush in and yuke somebody up, holy duck. The rest of the night was uneventful. Got a quick halal bologna and mustard and fruit punch and slept on the floor till I saw a judge. Got out the next day raw. I spent a weekend in a city jail processing facility, not a full-blown jail prison, due to a DUI. Yes, I was a ducking idiot. I got 3 interesting stories out of it. 1. There was a guy in solitary across the room banging on the door. Obviously it's steel, but it still seemed like he might somehow break it. He was screaming. They sold my beach crack. Over and over. I saw 4 guards line up with riot gear and batons and go in. I just heard blows landing, and I saw clothes flying out of the cell. They marched that man out of the cell and he looked like that scene in Con Air where they bag and gag them. I was a little more nervous after that. 2. When in the drunk tank with 15 or 20 other dudes, one dude was sitting on the back of the toilet. That is where the tank in theory would be, with his feet on the seat. Another guy came up and said he needed to use it. He said go ahead, and just spread his legs. We were all a little taken back. 3. I spent the entire night talking and getting to know 2 different guys. They both seemed very nice, like they were picked up for something stupid. We get in front of the judge and it turns out he had beaten someone within an inch of their life earlier that night. Just goes to show you never can tell. On another note, I expected it would be incredibly locked down. However, all the cell doors were open and while you're expected to stay in your cell, in theory you could have wandered all around that area. Kind of surprised me. I won't say where and when, but when I arrived, the staff opened 2 cell doors to an empty day room floor. My cellmate, not having much to do except be nosy, stared out the window. It happened quickly, but he immediately recognized what was going on and mattered, oh shit, here we go again. I went to look. From one door appeared a one-armed skinhead who walked towards the only other cell open. A kid, alone in his new cell, poked his head out to see why they cracked his door. He saw the skinhead and froze up. The skinhead pushed him inside and ducked him up. I later found out it was staged fighting by the guards. Well, that seems perfectly logical and not corrupt whatsoever. I was in prison for 2 years, found guilty of mugging. I didn't do it. It was my sister, and had a cell to myself. I'm a 24-year-old woman and at the time was 16. The guard by my cell would always try and flirt with me and would come into my cell and touch me. Fast forward about 8 months, maybe 12 AM. Everyone else was asleep, and to my dismay, so was the night guard. That officer opened my cell and quietly crept up on me in my sleep. He grabbed my shirt and tried to rip it off, and when I punched him he grabbed my pants. I screamed, which woke up the night guard. I don't know much of what happened after that. All I know is the dude was fired, sent to prison, and I was put with a female night guard. Moral of the story: prison guards can do pretty bad things. My post is kind of late, but I got out of prison in upstate New York in October. I saw crazy shit. Prison is a wild place. One time there was a fight in my pod. After fights they have everybody stripped down to their drawers in their cubes so the COs can walk around and do body checks to see who was in the fight. Well, the people in the fight wore gloves so their hands were fine. One guy's hands were shaking. They asked him why. He said he was cold. They said bullshit and took him to the day room. We hear him getting beat for a solid 5 minutes, then a van came and picked him up. The next day I heard from somebody in my vocational class they took the guy the COs beat to another pod, and 5 minutes after he got there claimed there was a fight and did the strip search again, then beat him in the same manner and brought him to the box this time. Another thing I saw happen was in the yard. Somebody was smoking K2 and passed out. Well, while he was on the ground the COs started kicking him and they had to take him to the hospital. Prison is a crazy place. Highly recommend not going. When I worked at a state prison, there were COs who got caught having sex with inmates. When you're horny, you gotta do what you gotta do, but you can't do any better than an inmate at your place of employment. Blood rushed to the wrong head there. I watched a guard wink and turn his back before I was multiple raped whilst in juvenile detention. Bastard made jokes for a week about my sore ass 48 years ago. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Our COs were pretty human. We had a little guy, probably 5'3", who was pretty arrogant, but we all figured that it was probably because he was afraid. Note: minimum security state prison in the late 70s. I used to be a company. I quit because of all the corruption. I was threatened when I went to whistleblow because HR and the manager and all the higher ups were in on the corruption. Anyway, rape is pretty common. It's pretty common for COs to rape inmates or mutilate their genitals. It happens more often than you think and it's sickening. It's really unfortunate that this happens. That's why I quit. I'm studying to become a lawyer so that one day I can take them down. Don't know if it's the worst thing, but the guards blackmailed my family in the visiting days so they could see me. The price? An overpriced 3L Coke, $80 approx, sold by the store inside the prison, run by the cartel. So yeah, it was cold tough. The worst thing about prison was the dementors. They were flying all over the place and they were scary, and then they'd come down and they'd suck the soul out of your body and it hurt. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.